All right. So welcome to this practical. All right, practical nine. Okay. So this practical nine, right, is about creating classes and objects. Um, so if you look at here, right, we have task one and task two, right? Okay. So we will actually try out both. Okay. So first of all, right, we look at the task one, right? Convert the following program. Okay. To object-oriented approach. Okay. So this is what actually we did previously, right? Practical 5. So this is actually you're having a just a loop, and then you have a method main, okay, and then you have a class here, right? So the objective of this, right, this particular practical session is we need to actually convert, all right, the programs that actually we developed earlier, right, into object-oriented manner, all right? So by just looking at this, right, we need to get an idea, right, of how we can actually convert this into object-oriented way, right? So this is actually is like a modular approach, okay, structured way, right? So you have a method, okay, and then you have everything there, right? Input, process, output, okay. So if we want to actually convert this, right, to a 100% object-oriented way, first of all, we need to understand um, the codes actually, right? What exactly, right, this codes actually, right, performing. So we look at here, it has got to do with something with marks here, all right, and then you have the loops here, okay, and then we display whether pass or fail, and all this actually, right, related to a domain or field, right, a student, all right, education, right, related to the marks actually, right? So the first thing that you need to figure out is when you want to come up with the object-oriented design is to identify the field, or you need to identify the class, okay? So definitely, right, this has got to do something with student, all right? So student marks, right, student marks. So once we have identified student, right, the class, the next thing, right, you have to actually, right, look into attributes. What would be the attributes that we will have for student, right? Obviously, right, in the real world, right, we may actually want to store student ID, student name, student age, and so forth, right? So we want to keep it simple, right, for this program, okay? So we will just have perhaps name and age, okay, and then marks, three things, right? So we will create a student class, all right, having some variables, all right? So the student class will store some information, right, like name, age, and marks. So I'm going to go to the IntelliJ, and I'm going to create a new Java class. Maybe I'll just create a new package first. Okay. Week 9, right? Okay. So week 9. So maybe I need to have one more package, sub package, because we have two tasks, right, that we need to perform, right? And under the task one, right? So this will become a sub package. This is the main package, and we will create a class called student. Okay, student. Right. So this student class, right, it is known as a domain or entity class, okay? So which means that this particular, there are various categories of classes, right, based on its functions, right? So this particular class, right, student, is known as domain or entity class because it is just used to store information, that's all right? So what are the information that this particular class can store, right? So it will be definitely, right, we will stick to only three things: private, string, I'll just put it name. Of course, in the real world, right, you have to like have more refined attributes, lah, all right, name, first name, last name, and so on, right? So we just keep it simple. Integer age, integer age. Next, I'm going to have private double marks. Okay, so this all this, right, we call it instance variables. Okay, instance variables means variables that actually belong to object. Okay, so there are actually two situations, right? There are some variables that actually belong to object. There are some variables that actually belong to class. So the class means the student here. Okay, so all this actually belong to object. Okay, so the next thing, right, that we need to do is methods. Okay, methods. So as you know, right, a student, right, is like a blueprint, right, where it has all the specification, right. It has attributes and also a collection of methods, right. So we are creating a blueprint or specification, right, so that we can actually create a real student. Real student means real object. Okay, just like in the real world, right, in the university, right, um, before we can actually create a student ID, right, for each student, we need to actually figure out what kind of information that we would like to store for student, right. So we need to create a blueprint, right, in the system. Okay, a student should have student ID, student name, age, and so on, right. So that is actually equivalent to creating a blueprint, right, a student, right. So that's what actually we are doing now. We are creating a blueprint. All right, so once we have done this, right, then we can actually create real students. Okay, so next, methods. Methods actually, you have various types. Okay, so first of all, right, I'm going to create methods called constructor. Okay, so public student, you have this, right. Now this is actually a constructor, right, that is known as default constructor, or we call it no argument constructor. Okay, default constructor means, right, you don't have anything inside here, right. Nothing is there, no parameters, so I call no argument constructor, right. So you may actually ask why we need to have. First of all, is for the good practice. Second thing, right, you may actually have some default values. Name, I'm just giving you an example, right. This name. Okay, so maybe you want to initialize, let's do something to a particular value, right, something like this. All right, so we want to give a default values, right. So for now we keep it simple. All right, so we don't have anything there. And technically, right, this name, right, all this, right, when you declare here, right, outside of the method, uh, two things you have to know, right. The name actually, right, is set to null. All right, by default it will have a null value. Age will have 0, marks will have 0 0.0. So you don't have to worry about providing initial values. All right, remember previously, right, we were actually worrying about, whether we initialize the values or not. So when you create a method, you have to initialize all this, right. Good practice. But when you put outside here, right, automatically the system will set to 0, this one will set to 0 0.0, and this one will set to um, null. All right, okay. So you don't have to worry about initializing them, right. And the other special thing, right, that we need to know is all these variables, right, have wider scope. They actually can be used anywhere in any methods. So they have actually wider scope, not a narrow scope. All right, so next I'm going to create another constructor. Okay, and I'll call it this. This is parameterized constructor. Okay, parameterized constructor. Okay, parameterized constructor. So what does it mean by here, parameterized? Parameterized means, right, you have some parameters inside. Okay, parameters inside. Okay, and then the name and this name, right, are different. This name, right, is actually local variable. They can only be used within this method, from here and then ending here, right. So all these are formal parameters. They can only be used within this method. So if you don't put this, right, the system will get confused. So it doesn't know, right, this name whether refers to this or refers to this. So when you put this, right, then um, clearly, right, the system will be able to understand, oh, okay, this name is actually referring to instance variable, whereas this one actually refers to the local variable. That's it. Now you may actually ask me, um, why can't we can actually put something else here, right? Instead of name, we can just put n. Okay, here put n, no issues. All right, no issues, right? Okay, so this actually will avoid any confusion, but most of the time, right, we will have something like this. Okay, name. So because we need to have something that understandable. All right. Okay, the variable names, right, should be understandable. All right, so name and so on, right? So this is a parameterized constructor, right? So here itself, right, we are applying, right, what is called as overloading constructor. Okay, overloading constructor. So overloading constructor means that you can have the same method name but difference in terms of the method signature. All right, the same method name, right? So this overloading can apply to other methods. We can also apply to constructor as well. Now you can have as many as possible constructors, not only two. All right, so depending on the requirements. So once we have done this, line up these constructors, next we need to figure out about creating other methods, and we call it getters and setters. Okay, getters and setters, right, we need to create for every instance variable. All right, so we need to create a pair of getter and setter for each instance variable. So you have three, right? So 3 times 2, 6 methods, right? So first one, okay, get name, return name. So this is getter. Next, I need to set, um, so I put here void set name. That's it. So this is actually is setter for name, right? This is getter for the name. So we don't want people, right, when you put private, you always need to put private instance variables, right? When you put private, right, outsiders cannot access directly these variables, cannot. Okay, so you may actually ask me, right, how do actually or outsiders, right, access this variable to modify this, right? So all the modification and accessing these variables, right, should be done through the getters and setters. So that is why you have get name here, right, to retrieve the value. This is to modify the value of the name, right? So you have to do the same for the rest. Okay, and then I need to have one more, get marks and set marks. Okay, so all in you have 6, right? 1 2 3 4 5 6. Now you have to actually observe here, right, the naming convention, Java naming convention, right? So we put here get, all right, so that people will know that this is meant to retrieve the value, and immediately after that, right, you see the uppercase. All right, okay, so all this need to observe lah. All right, okay, so same thing applies for sectors as well. Okay, so once you have done this, the next thing is other things that we need to create to display, okay, content of student object. Okay, so here you have override. Right, later on I will explain about this as we progress to inheritance polymorphisms. Okay, now this is the method, Java built-in method, right, that is used to actually display the content of the object, student object. We want to display the content of the object, right? So the content of the object, right, varies from one student to another, right, isn't it? All right, so the name will be different, age will be different, marks, right? So we use this method, right, to to know the details of the student. Okay, so like name, age, and so on, marks, right? You can actually decorate in your way, but we want to keep it simple, right? So when you call this method, definitely is going to display name, age, marks. Okay, now there is advantage of using the Java built-in toString. All right, there is advantage. Okay, so later on we will see that. Okay, and if you don't want to use this toString, you can go for customize, right? You can actually come up with your own. Okay, so I can just put string display display student. Okay, so I can just copy this and then paste it here. So you can call this as well, right? And it will do the same thing as this, right? But this has some advantages, all right? So later on we will see this. Okay, so both actually have the same purpose, all right? So this is the basic things that you have to do, right? Whenever you encounter entity class. So entity class, you have some information to be stored, and then you have some constructors, you have some getters and setters, and obviously you need to have this, right? A method to display the content of the object. Okay. Now, on top of all this, right? Okay. Um, I'm going to create one variable. Okay. So I'm going to create a variable. Okay, that will be used to keep track. So I'll name this to keep track, okay, number of students, okay, a variable, right? So let's say I've created like 10 objects. So when I say 10 objects means, right, that will translate into 5 students, correct? If I create 100 objects of students means that I've created 100 students, right? So I need to keep track, right? So if let's say students actually enrolling a particular course, right? So we need to keep track. Okay, how many students actually have enrolled so far, and the students, might actually keep on increasing and increasing, right? Or maybe actually decreasing the other way around. So I need to create a variable here, and we'll call it static, right? Static integer, all right. And I'll call it this is number of students. Okay, number of students. So automatically this number of students, right, will be set to 0, initialized to 0, right? So you don't have to worry about initializing. And then you may actually ask me why actually I'm using static here. Now static means, right, there is only one copy in the entire memory, right, number of students, right? So in this case I'm creating a static because this variable will be the same for all the objects. Okay, if you if let's say, right, currently number of students is 0, for example, if we create 500 objects, okay, all the objects, right, okay, when they access the number of students they still get 0, right? So this one doesn't go based on the objects, right? So it's actually based on the class actually. So when you create a static variable, right, so automatically, right, this variable, all right, belong to class. So there will be only one copy because we just want to keep track how many students we have created, right? So even you have 5 objects, right? The 5 objects that we have created, right? We still have the same number of students, right? So that is why we created static, all right, not instance variable, right? So that's the reason. Okay, so this number of students, right, will fluctuate, right? Means that you can actually increase or can decrease, right? So I need to actually create a getter for this, right? So I'm going to have public. If people want to know, right, how many students you have enrolled, right? So I need to have public static integer get number of students. Now, why I actually have static method? Because whenever you use the static variable, if you want to access, you're working with the static variable, then please use static method. All right. So it's always like that, static and static, right? We can actually mix and match, but it's not a good practice. All right. Don't do that. Okay. So static and static. Instance variable should be accessed by instance method. So all this actually instance method, right? Why? Because we don't have the static there, right? All this actually instance method, and this actually instance variables. Okay. Next, how do we actually modify the number of students here, right? So I'm going to create some special methods. Public static again. Okay. Void increase student count, for example. Okay. Static, and I put number of students plus plus. Okay, so whenever you call this method, you'll increase the number of students. Right. So the next thing, okay, static void decrease student count, number of students. That's it. So as you start developing, classes and everything, right, automatically, right, you will tend to create more methods because every method, right, should do a specific job, very specialized, right? So this person, right, is only performing, increment, right? This one is decrement and so on, right? So automatically the complexity, right, will increase, all right? Okay, without you actually aware, right? So you might be thinking, okay, I need to create another method and so on, right? So eventually you have a lot of methods, but we need to know that the student class is just used to store information, so don't have any other operations. All right, so all this actually to increase, okay, increase the number of students, right, to modify the value. Okay, all right. So we have done this, so far. Now I'm going to create another variable just to store the objects of students. Okay, now you can actually put it here or you can put it outside later on in the controller, right? Okay, so for now we keep it simple. All right, so I'm going to have another static, static, all right, and student. Okay, I can just put students. Okay, students equals to new student, right? So I put 10. Okay, so all this while we have been focusing on creating arrays to store integer values, double values, okay, string and so on, right? So right now this is not integer, this is not double, this is not string, this is student. So when you put student here means this array is capable of storing student objects, all right? And how many objects that this array can store? Maximum 10. That's it, all right? And why actually making this static? Because um, I just want to store the number of objects as students objects, right? Okay, so I just want to have one copy of array, right? So this is actually is a static array. Okay, static array, right? Okay, so we define, all right, the size, all right. So once you have declared here 10, at the later stage you cannot actually increase this, you can't do that with a static array, but it's actually super fast, okay, when you work with a static array. Okay, and obviously, right, you may actually ask me, do we need to have a setter or getter? I need an only getter. Okay, so I'm going to create a getter for this, public. Okay, and I'm going to have student get students. Yeah, okay, because this array, right, will be used by outsiders, so therefore I need to have a getter. So basically, right, what happens here is, can you see that we are returning an array type of student? All right, so we are returning the address of the first box. All right, we are returning the address of the first box. Okay, because this particular array, right, will be used by another person, so we need to actually get the address of the first box, or we get the address of the array. Okay, so once we have done all this, okay, completed, okay, so next we need to move on to other things. Okay, so controllers. Okay, so I'm going to create another class which is going to manage, all right, it's going to manage this entity class. All right, so I'm going to create a class called, I can call it a controller or service, right? Okay, service student. Okay, service student, right? Now this service student, right, is not a domain class or entity class. This service student, right, is basically, right, is used to manage entity classes. So therefore, right, this class will have all the operations only, okay, all the methods only. All right. So you may not have any attributes and so on, because that is not the intention of having this kind of class category of this class, right? So student is entity class. This is a different type of class having different purpose. All right. And we call it service, right, because this is used to manage this entity class student, right? So what are the things that we will do, right, in the real world, right, to manage student? We will add student, update student, delete student, remove student, those kind of things. Just like you learn in database, right, like create, read, update, delete, right? So first of all, I'm going to have add student, for example. Okay, add student. Okay, add student, right? So I'm going to have a message. Okay, so each time when you add a student, you will print this adding student. Okay, adding student. Okay, right, adding student. Next, I need to find a way, right, to store object of student into an array. So that's what I have to do, right? Let's say this is an object we have created, right, student, right, and I need to put into this array. I need to put into this array. Okay, so how do I actually do that? First of all, from here, because the array is over here, so I need to get the address of the array. So that's when actually, right, this particular method will be useful. Okay, so I'm going to get this. Okay, student get, let me check here. I need to put here static, right? Static, because this is static array, static lah. All right. So next I need to, okay, get student. All right, first I get the array. All right, get the array. After that you need to determine, right, which box that this student, right, has to go into. All right, so I need to use, because every box, right, you have an index, right, starting at 0, 1, 2 and so on, right? So the first object, right, we need to place into the first box, right? So once we get the array, next I need to correctly, right, add the student object into the first box, right? So student get student number of students. Okay, okay. So this get number of students, right, initially, right, this number of students will be set to 0. All right, set to 0. Okay, so when you get the get number of students, it will return a 0. All right, so the whole thing, right, will be 0. So the array 0, so that we know that this particular object, right, will go into the first box. But after that, we need to increase this student, increase student count. So when you do this, right, what will happen is now you have 1. All right, so the variable number of students will be increased to 1. All right, so at this point is 0. Okay, the number of students is 0. So at this point is 1. So the next time when you add an object, right, then the whole thing becomes 1. Then you will put into the second box. All right, so that is why this is important, right? Especially when you're working with static array, we need to have a variable to keep track that, because we have several boxes. You have to put it into appropriate box, the right box, right? Otherwise you'll have you get corrupted, or you misplace the objects and so on. All right, so this is very important. All right, so once you have done this, next, okay, next we think about removing and so on, right? Okay, so let's say we want to remove, okay, remove student. All right, so I'm going to have one more method. Okay, and I will call it this, I can just put here remove. All right. Okay. Remove student. Remove student and string name. Now to remove student, right? First of all, right, we can remove student based on the ID or based on the name and so on, right? So I want to remove the student based on name. But the issue here, right, when you work with the static array, right, we need to find, we need to find, okay, which object actually matching the name, right? So we need to do sort of like searching here, all right? So I'm going to have index 0, all right? And then I have to walk through this array. Okay, so I'm going to have integer I equals to 0, I less than, okay, get numbers, okay, get uh, number of students. Okay, so if you have get number of students is, I need to minus 1, okay, minus 1, or you can just put length minus 1. Okay, student get sorry, okay, student get students length, okay, minus 1. Okay, so you take the entire array. Okay, if the array is, a maximum is 10, right, you have 10 boxes, but the allowed index, maximum allowed index, right, that you can actually reach is 9. You start at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You cannot actually go to the 10, right? Okay, then you'll be out of bound, all right? You have an error. The maximum index is 9. So that is why it's minus 1. All right, total 10 minus 1. Okay. Next, I need to do some searching. I can do the linear search. Okay, linear search equals, all right, get name, okay, equals name, right? So if matches index equals to I, okay, and then break. Okay, so now so what happens now is uh, we find the index. Okay, we find the index that we want to delete. Okay, so after finding, right, okay, so we have here, right, up to here, right, okay, and this one is complaining, right, because we need to return, all right, return something, right? Okay, so I'm going to have here next. Okay, so let's say we found the object that has matching this one. Okay, matching this, right? Okay, so if, let's say, put here index -1, for example, right? Okay, -1, right? So -1 means it's not found, right? So maybe I just put here, okay, integer, right? Okay, so now if I put here if, all right, index is not -1, okay, so now you can actually remove it, get student index equals to null, all right? So we are kind of doing detaching, disconnect lah, all right? So when you put null means you're disconnecting the object, all right, from the array, right? So what will happen, right? The object will be destroyed, equals to null. Okay, all right. So if let's say, all right, and the thing is not found, let's say, all right, it's not found. Okay, so we need to tell the user, right, hey, look, whatever that you entered, right, the name doesn't match. Okay, it doesn't match, right? So put it here. Okay, all right. So you can just put here um, return. Okay, return. You can just put not found, something like this. Here put string. Okay, and what happens here, right, is um, I can just put it here. Okay, return. I can just put um, name is removed, something like that. Okay, so you have two situations, right? Once you have removed, then you can return name is removed successfully. Okay, done. Return. All right, so at least the user will know, okay, whether found or not found. So you can put name not found, name not found. Okay, so next we can have other methods as well. We want to get the total students. All right, so I'm going to have public integer total students. So you can just put return get students, not get students, get student count, get number of students, get number of students. This one. Done. Okay, done. All right. So you have done this. You can actually increase more methods and so on, right? For update, search, and all those, you can do that, no issues, right? The whole thing can be simplified by having another method, find, and so on, right? You can simplify further, right? So what I actually am showing you here, right, is there is a class that is specializes on just performing operations, right, on entity class, right? So next we need to have a driver class. Okay, so I'll call it driver. Yes, okay, driver class. Okay, so driver class is nothing but um, having just um, main function. Okay, okay. So this particular um, class, all right. So I'm going to create, okay, instance first service student. Okay, okay, that's it. And this class, right, this object, right, is going to control or manage the student, right? Okay, so I'm going to have service student at student. Okay, at student. So I'm going to have some details here, 24 and then 67. Okay, done. I need to have additional parentheses there, right? Okay. Oops. Right. Okay, so now we will see, right, how many students we have enrolled, right? System. Okay, and over here we're going to have total. Where's total? Yeah, right. So when you run this, the system will show, right, there is only one student enrolled. Okay, total students. So it takes a while. Okay, can you see that adding student? The adding student actually, right, appears because we have this system out, right? So basically it calls this method, the add student, right? It calls and then increase the thing, right? So now right now we have uh, one student. Okay, so let's say we keep on adding, right? So let's say I'm going to have one more, and this will be, let's say, Jerry. Okay, and this is 70, right? So now when you execute, right? Okay, you see these two times will be called adding student because the method is being called two times, and now total number of students is 2, right? So it works well as expected. Okay, now let's say we are removing, all right, system out. Okay, so now I'm going to remove a student, right? Let's say remove, all right, the name is Jerry, for example. Okay, and I'm going to find out how many students after this, right? So when you run this, okay, name is removed successfully, right? Okay, so adding student, right? So we go back here, um, remove student. Oh yeah, I forgot to add this remove student, right? Definitely we need to decrease the value, right? So we need to decrease the value. So what I need to do is uh, I need to add here, right? Okay, decrease the student, decrease, right? Okay, we need to decrease the student, right? So now when you run, you get the correct value. Okay, can you see that it got one? Means there's only one student. Name is removed successfully, right? Okay, so this is the message that we got because of this, right? Name is removed successfully, right? So you can have like this to be more practical, all right? Okay, name, you can just put name here, all right? So when you run, okay, name Jerry is removed successfully. That's it, right? And of course, you can just put it like that. Okay. Now, what if, let's say, I type in something else, okay, and we will check here because Jerry one is does not exist, right? So you are getting null pointer and everything. All right. So go back here. Okay. So um, the reason that you are getting here right now because you have 10 boxes, all right, 10 boxes, but you only fill up 2, right? Okay, fill up 2. Okay, so you have to make sure, right, that if you go to the third box, right, if you go to the third box, there is nothing there, so definitely it's null there, right? So that's why it's throwing the error, right? So you cannot search, all right, you cannot search um, all the boxes because maximum that we have filled up only 2 objects, right? So how to prevent this? All right, so how to prevent this? So we can just put here, okay, if, all right, okay, if student, so you can put here is not equals null. All right, and I need to put this. Yeah, okay, and this will be inside. Okay, so where is the opening and closing for this? Um, yeah, it's missing, right? So put it here. Okay, so here we have to protect the thing. All right, only you have the objects, you go through this checking first. All right, so now when you run, okay, can you see that name not found? Name not found, and still remains 2. All right, so this is the thing that you have to do some sort of additional codes when you're working with static array, right? Okay, so you cannot walk through all of them, and then for checking, right, of course you walk through all, but some boxes are not filled in with objects. All right, okay, so we need to put this, all right, precaution, right, otherwise you get runtime error. Okay, now once you have done this, right, okay, and let's say, right, you want to display the content of the objects of the students, right, you want to display, right? Okay, so we have some ways to do that. Of course we can use this method for loop. Okay, integer I equals to 0. Okay, and this is -1. Okay, and if not equals null. Okay, so I have some additional there. System out. Okay, and I just put here, that's it, system out. So when you run this, you do tend to display, right, the content of all the objects, students objects. Okay, can you see that you're displaying the content of the objects? So in actual fact, right, when you execute this, is automatically calls this one toString. It calls toString here. That's one of the advantage, right? So you don't have to put like dot toString on it. The system understands. So that's one of the advantages. And we need to put this, right, otherwise you will check everything, will try to display, right, um, uh, what do you call objects in other boxes where we do it doesn't exist, right? So only 2 objects exist in the box array, right? You can also, if you don't want to do like this, we can also have more simplified version, right? So I can just put for, okay, and student s, and I get the array. Okay, and that's it. And I just need to put this, right, um, student if, oops, if student not equals null. That's it. Okay, so you're right. This more simplified version, right? Okay, you tend to get the same thing, right? So can you see that you're getting the same thing? Okay, so next we try to meet the objective of the question, right? Okay, so over here we have, okay, so next about the marks. Okay, so I want to check, I want to display, right, whether a particular student, right, pass or fail, right? So I need to work with objects and also array, right? So you have like I less student get students, right? Okay, um, length, okay, -1, and student get students I not equals null I plus plus. Okay. Okay, so now let's look at the entire thing. Why you're getting error integer I, right? It's supposed to be I. Okay, less than thing, minus 1 and students, okay, I not equals null, right? So you have two conditions here I put here, right? Okay, don't traverse all the boxes, right? If you don't put this, no issues, but it will actually, walk through all the boxes, right? So you put the condition here itself, right? So if you have two objects in the array, right, you will just walk through two times. That's it, right? Okay. So now I need to have if, okay, get marks, okay, more equals 60. Okay, so I can just put here system out println and student get numbers. That's it. um, you can just put here get name, okay, and you pass the exam. That's it. So if not, okay, um, you just put this, okay, you fail the exam, okay, done. Right, so what I'm going to do is both passing mark, right? So I'm going to adjust here. So I'm going to put one is 40, okay, 46. All right, so now we run. Okay, so I'm going to turn off this, no need, no need. Okay, so just run. So can you see that Sam, you failed the exam because Sam is 46 less than 60, right? This one is passed the exam, right? So eventually we meet the objective from the question, right? Okay. So once we have done this, okay, we will look to the next question, right? We have write a Java program based on the following requirements, rectangle, okay. So this is quite straightforward. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create maybe a sub package, right? So I'm going to create package, okay. So I'm going to put here task 2, okay, task 2, right? So next I'm going to have rectangle, okay, rectangle, okay. So rectangle, right, is very straightforward. The class name is rectangle, class contains and everything. You just have to follow this, right? Right, then you go to test. That's it. So what I'm going to do is rectangle. So what is the thing that we need to have? So you look at here, we have um, width and height. That's it. Okay, so you have private width and height. So it should be double. Okay, width and height. That's it. And I need to create a constructor. Okay, rectangle, Okay, and I create this width equals to 1, height equals to 1, because they already mentioned there, right? Default value both are width and height 1, right? Okay. Next, I need to create parameterize constructor height. Okay. So is we also mentioned here, right? No argument constructor you need to create. A constructor that creates rectangle with specified height and width. This is a parameterize. This one. Okay. And as usual, we need to create all the getters and setters. Okay. So double um, oops, get height and this width. Okay. And return. Okay. Okay. So return. Oops. Just need to remove this. Okay. Right. So next is the setting. Public set. That's it. And one more. I need to have the height return. That's it. And public set. That's it. So eventually, right, we have all the setters and getters for the instance variables. That's it. Right. On top of this, I need to create one more, which is the toString. So I'm going to have override. Okay. And public toString and return. That's it. Done. Okay. Now, according to this, what we call specification requirements, we need to create some additional custom made methods, right? Additional methods. Get area and get parameter, right? So I'm going to get that, right? Public, okay, double, okay, get area, right? And return height and width, okay. And then I have one more, which is double get parameter. That's it, done. So this is something additional methods, all right? This is mentioned here, all right? Okay, it's mentioned here, right? So once you have done this, so it's complete now. So this class is complete. Next, we need to create the driver class. Okay, so driver, that's it. And I'm going to have public static void main string arguments. Okay, done. Now here they have already mentioned, right, to test the thing, right? Write test program, create two rectangle objects. One is with 4 and the other one is 40 and 3.5, 35.9, and then display the width, height, area parameter of each rectangle in this order, right? So what we're going to do is I need to create two particular objects. Okay, so system out. Maybe I just create rectangle 1 equals to rectangle. So first one will be the 4, okay, and then 40 and rectangle 3.5 and 35.9. That's it. And we want to display the content of the things, right? It's very easy. So you can just put um, system out. Okay, so you don't have to put toString, right? So it's understood. Okay, and system out is for rectangle. So when you run this, you'll be able to see the content, right? Okay, Okay, so you can see that you have this, right? So the question is actually mentioned, right? You need to display everything, right, with height and all those things. Okay, so what we can do here, right, is um, we can have this and get area. Okay, and then have here get parameter, right? Okay, so when you run this, you get the area and parameter, right? Okay, this is the area and parameter for the first one, right? So I can just modify here. I can do that. What I can do is I can actually I can put here um, what you call here will be I can just put area, okay, and I can just call this get area, okay, and that's it, parameter done. Okay, get area, get parameter. So you can call the method the existing that here inside, right? All right. So when you run, okay, so you can just remove this. Um, this is rectangle one. That's it. Okay. So you have everything that you can actually observe there, right? Okay. So when you run, so you get to see everything: a rectangle, width, height, area, parameter, and everything. That's it. Okay. So this is how actually, right, we need to do when you write a program. All right, we need to this will be entity class. I'll say this is entity class. Store some information. Okay. So this is a driver class. This is a service student, and this is the student. All right. Okay, so we completed all those things. So next you need to try this on your own. Task 3, right? It's quite similar to the task 2, right? Okay, so I guess that's all. All right, so I'll catch up with you. All right, take care.